Looks a little clearer that way. Hopefully that just, yeah. I didn't get it all the way in. It's like not wanting to go all the way in.
Okay, now it's raining really hard, so I'll be back with you in a second. Hey guys, we want to start this video by saying we apologize for being so disorganized last week. It was our first weekend on the build, so our minds were just so jumbled, and I feel like that played out in the video.
We definitely came a little mal-prepared, didn't have all the tools we needed, and where we're working on the van is kind of far away from where we live, so we were kind of screwed off the bat. So we made that apology before we posted this last video, and the video actually did a lot better than we thought it was going to do. It was way more popular than any of our other videos so far. So thank you to everybody who watched and all of our new subs. Much appreciated.
Yeah, so this week, instead of showing you kind of the boring stuff that we did, we want to just talk about the mistakes that we've made this far. We have 5 pretty big mistakes that we want to give back to the van life community, so anyone that is working on a build doesn't have to make the same mistakes we did.
Mistake number 1, the weather.
It sounds really obvious, but we checked the weather. It said it wasn't going to rain for 2 hours. We set up the canopy tent thinking it might be some light rain and it'll be just fine. And then it ended up pouring down, and we had our insulation out with the van doors open. We had our furring strips out. Our furring strips ended up getting wet. It started pouring rain. We set up a canopy tent and a tarp to keep our wood dry. Some of it got wet, so it's been a little stressful. And we ended up having to cut the ends off and wasting some material. And then they ended up bowing a little bit. Luckily, we were able to save the insulation. We tucked our insulation into the pocket over there, bungee corded it, and put these beams up to hold it up. Insane. And then over here, we have our little tent space keeping our wood dry. Just be extra careful, especially when in the stage of working with any insulation or wood, because you're gonna regret that.
Luckily we had that canopy tent, so whether it's just hot outside or it might rain, it might be a good idea to use a canopy tent if you have it, or possibly get one just in case.
Number 2, use a miter saw.
So originally coming into the van build, I thought we'd be able to get away with using a jigsaw a lot more, but
it makes the whole cutting process so much faster. We spent so much time trying to make the furring strips straight lines with the jigsaw.
So annoying. It's like just not straight across really. So using a miter saw, something called a chop saw, you can get a completely accurate cut every time, 90 degrees, everything's gonna line up with each other. I highly recommend getting a miter saw. I wish we would have got one sooner.
We ended up buying ours used for 50 bucks. We actually ended up forgetting it at home when we had to cut the furring strips, so it ended up being kind of useless anyways, but luckily we'll be able to use it later in the build.
Which brings us to mistake number 3, having all of the right tools. We dove right in without maybe having completely every tool we might need. There was definitely some things that we were missing.
So we already had the jigsaw and the electric drill, but besides that, we ended up ordering a bulk of supplies that first week. We ordered safety goggles, a miter saw, a level angled ruler so we can make sure everything was a straight line.
Some call it a 90 or a square.
Tracing tools, wood clamps, a pro gun to use the spray foam with more accuracy, and saw horses. All this we used a lot and it came in really handy. So just to simplify this, I'm going to throw this list of items in the description for you. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button and the like button. We would really appreciate it. Number 4, our screws.
So initially we weren't going to screw our furring strips into the floor. We were kind of hesitant about putting any extra holes in the van. But after laying the furring strips down, there were some areas that weren't as stable as we wanted them to be, and we were afraid they weren't going to be level in certain spots, so we really wanted to have them fastened to the floor and make everything as flush with each other as possible. So initially, when we first bought our screws, we bought what is called self-tapping screws. We were confident that these would work just because it said it was for metal. It would screw into metal. But I guess the van floor is just a little too thick for those.
So we got the metal screws. We brought them back to the van, started drilling into the furring strips, and could not get through the metal. And it turns out there's a difference between self-tapping metal screws and self-drilling metal screws. Self-tapping metal screws are only for thin metal and sheet metal, and self-drilling screws are designed for thicker metal.
I feel like I already knew that that's not what we should have gotten. I think the reason we ended up getting them is because of the length of them, and we were just hoping they would work. But they didn't, so don't make that mistake.
So the next morning, we first thing got the self-drilling screws, and they worked like a charm.
These are self-drilling screws, and they have this at the end, which helps you get through thicker metal. And it looks like that. So these are the ones you need to drill from your wood furring strips into the floor of your van.
So the length of the screw kind of brings us into number 5, which is paying extra close attention to permanent holes that you're putting in the floor of the van. When we were screwing holes into the furring strips into the floor of the van, we tried to be diligent and check underneath the van prior to screwing something in, just so we didn't hit anything really important underneath the van.
So we have the exhaust shield, but I think if we go right, the exhaust shield sticks up too. If we go there, and like where your palm is,
We did make one small mistake. We screwed a hole by the side door of the van, and it ended up screwing into the track, blocking the side door from closing.
So I ended up taking the screw out, and we didn't have any shorter screws to replace it. So all I did was put some foam insulation under the board, and then I filled the hole with sealant, and just so we wouldn't have a random hole there.
Luckily, it wasn't a big deal in this case, but just be extra diligent because you could possibly hit the fuel tank or hit something else. So since we are new at building van and we don't know everything, we thought it might be a good idea to post more mistakes and things to avoid type videos, because I think that would be more like real to us and helpful for other people. So please subscribe if you are interested in seeing more of this type of video, and we will see you in 2 weeks because we are going on vacation. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.